Interviews with business owners and veteran executives who share their wisdom and expertise to help you de-stress, free up time, and make more money. Profits of IT. Welcome back to the Profits of IT. I am Jim Punzenberger, your host and the creator of the Managed Prospecting System. If you're looking to generate leads and appointments without cold calling, ad spend, or spamming, check out managedprospectingsystem.com. Today, I have Stephanie with me. Stephanie, will you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Yeah, I'm Stephanie Cox. I am the president at Lumatix, and we are a platform that enables business users to build apps without code. My background of almost 20 years of experience, primarily in marketing and sales leadership organizations, ranging from startups to large enterprises.
Cool. So what's something interesting about yourself outside of work?
Oh, great question. One of the interesting things about me is I actually just recently adopted my third child. She joined our family in April. She's 12 years old, and her adoption was finalized a couple weeks ago.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And so you have mother of three now.
Mother of three, yes. Two 15-year-olds and a 12-year-old.
So I bet they keep you busy.
They do, and they eat a lot of food. You can never imagine how much teens eat until you experience it as a parent, I say.
I can imagine. I guess I can vaguely remember when I was a teen and I was pretty much, I think I would come home from school and about every 5 minutes I was in the refrigerator again.
Yeah, the amount of snacks children can put away is impressive. I don't ever remember eating that many snacks or needing that many snacks a day to survive like children seem to. So
Yeah, I definitely would be weigh a lot more than I do if I kept eating that way as the way I ate when I was 15.
mhm.
So anyways, what do you say is your superpower when it comes to business? And how can others learn from that?
I I love that you use the word superpower. I talk to people about this all the time, that everyone has, a couple of superpowers where they're just exceptional at. And part of the challenge is figuring out what those are for you and knowing what they aren't. So I think one of my superpowers is I am really good at figuring out what I'm good at, what other people are
Uh-huh.
good at, and not doing the things I'm not good at, and hiring people that are way more talented than me to do those things. I think oftentimes, people feel like you have to be great at everything and you don't want to hire someone on your team that's smarter than you. Whereas I believe the complete opposite. You can't be great at everything. And if you're not great at something, then find someone who is and convince them to join you. So that's one thing I think I have a superpower at. The other one is storytelling. I
Mhm.
can listen to problems and that companies are having, and pretty quickly, like, it's my husband jokes and says it's like you go from A to Z in like 3 seconds. Like, we're talking about one thing and then you figured out a solution before I finish like saying what the problem was. And that's something I do a lot in business is I listen to problems and I can quickly start to figure out, like, especially with Limivate, how we'll solve it for them, and then
Uh-huh.
tell a story about how we get them there. And
Cool.
that is, I think, something that has taken a lot of practice, but it's also been, I think one of the reasons why I've been so successful in my career is I can hear problems and visualize them in my head and then you know, really tell those effectively pretty
Uh-huh.
quickly after.
So how would one develop that talent if you're, let's say, you're a novice at it and you want to improve on your storytelling and being able to go from problem to solution in 3 seconds? Uh, have any tips on developing that skill?
Yeah, I think, part of it is figuring out how you learn best. Right. And so everyone talks about this when you're like in college or high school, elementary school, but they don't talk about it in the real world, which is a huge miss. So everyone consumes information differently. Some people like to learn by videos, some people like to learn by having a conversation, reading material, etc. For me, I digest information the best when people talk to me and I write things down. So one of the things that I do, and everyone oftentimes looks at me and they're like, that's kind of old school. Like you're taking notes. You're not typing them on the computer. Well,
Paper and
part of that's
pencils and
right. Like
pens.
old, like I have notebooks, like actual notebooks that I have, right? And part of what I do is when I hear someone saying something, I'm writing down things that stick out to me in that conversation. And it does a couple of things for me because one, not only did I hear it, but now I saw it and I have the action of writing it down. So it sticks in my brain better. And it really helps me then start to think more thoroughly about it in that conversation or to reflect back on it later. Because oftentimes what I find is if you write down the things that you think are important in the conversation while they're happening, those are very different than what you think about later. Oftentimes we forget some of the words people used or the importance they placed on something after the moment's passed. And I collect a lot of that in real time. So that is one thing. I think the other part is figuring out how you best visualize. So for me, I visualize in my head. Some people need to whiteboard.
Uh-huh.
And I think the more often you do that, so if you're good, if you're like, I can think about solutions faster through whiteboarding, I would start to get really good at thinking of a problem and trying to whiteboard a solution rapidly. Because what you'll start to do with that is you'll get better and better at it. Because this is how I was. And then I started being able to do it in my head. Like my whiteboard is now like inside my brain.
So maybe
And
start with the whiteboard, and then uh, once you develop the skill on the whiteboard, hopefully you'll be able to advance to not needing a whiteboard.
exactly, because what you're doing is you're training yourself how you best problem solve. And you're doing it in a way that's repetitive. And every time you repeat something, you get faster at it. And I think sometimes people are like, oh, I just need more time to think about it. And that's true. Some people do need more time to digest information. But in reality, we only use a fraction of our brain. If you train yourself to do different things and you do it in a repeated fashion, what you'll find is you get better and better and better at it.
Cool. So any other additional tips on this? And if I want to improve on, I guess, visualizing things in my brain, and not needing a whiteboard.
Yeah. So one of the other things, if you that's really helpful too, especially as you're making the transition from like maybe a traditional whiteboard to doing it inside your head. You can get these little small whiteboards at your desk. Like, let me grab mine and I'll even show it to you. I have like this little small guy right here,
Yeah.
and it's not very large. It says in front of my keyboard, and I use it sometimes if someone's talking and I'm thinking of something and I want to make sure the idea doesn't get out of my head and I need to kind of sketch it out. I'll use it. I think that's another good thing. It's like an intermediary step, especially if it's something is more complicated. The other thing I love to do is I've moved away from whiteboards to just blank pieces of computer paper without lines, and we'll sketch things out there too. And I think that also starts to, a blank piece of paper, a blank whiteboard, the more and more you do it, creates that frame of reference in your head as well. And then I think the other big thing is realizing that oftentimes when you're hearing a problem and you're suggesting solutions, people don't expect perfection in the moment. They don't expect you within like 2 seconds of hearing a problem or a few minutes of hearing a problem to have the perfect answer. They're often impressed when you're able to respond intelligently. And I think sometimes we're taught for so long that, don't say anything until you know exactly what you're going to say. People, if it's not perfect and well thought out, people aren't going to know they're not going to like it. They're going to think negatively of you. They're not. Instead, they're going to be impressed that you've even thought about that and started to consider it and have a solution to propose as an idea and as a starting point. So oftentimes I'll frame it that way and I'll say something such as, okay, based on what you just said, here are some initial ideas, or here's some, initial thoughts of how we could start thinking about that. And what it does is it tells people, this is not the final solution of what I'm proposing, but this is the structure that I'm thinking about with it. And now, oftentimes, does it end up being close to that? Yes, because I've been doing this a long time. but it also lets people say, okay, she's throwing out ideas. It's not a brainstorm because it is well thought out and it's not just random thoughts.
Uh-huh.
But I am trying to present a solution to you to use for a discussion point.
Great. And you're muted right now. So
Okay.
any additional tips on that subject?
I would say the only other thing is, if you think that you can't do something like that, or you think that you need, some people will tell me I need days to process information. That's because that's how you maybe always done it. It doesn't mean that's how you have to do it moving forward. So decide what kind of person you want to be, what type of role you want to have in conversations and meetings, and train yourself to do that. That's what's possible. I think back to superpowers that we talked about before. I think the other thing that is really a superpower for me as well is, focusing on using words that matter in those conversations as well. So oftentimes I don't, I may do more listening than talking
Uh-huh.
when I'm talking to people. And I think oftentimes as a society, I think we're almost incentivized to talk more than to listen. And so start there too, because that'll also help you get better at hearing problems and starting to visualize solutions if you're doing more listening than talking initially. And do ask probing questions. So when someone says something, asking them why they thought that way or what caused them to get to this. I think those are all really good ways to get better at this.
Great. Those are some I think it's some great insight. Thank you. So before we wrap up here, you want to tell
Yeah.
us a quick bit about Lumativ and what's your elevator pitch for Lumativ?
Yeah, great question. So we believe that everyone should be able to build apps. So if you look at the last few years and you talk about applications, for the most part, your immediate thought is, I need to hire a developer. I'm going to use my internal IT resources, an agency, a dev shop, you name it, right? But it's going to involve code. Well, the reality is that doesn't need to be the case anymore. Everyone should be able to build an app and they should be able to build it without code. And that's what we make possible. And we work with brands that are in the mid-market enterprise space, really well-known companies, and empower business users in those organizations to be able to build apps in a matter of hours.
Oh, that's a big change from in the past. It was probably, months or years to build an app, and now it's hours.
Exactly. And it was months, years, a ton of time. Every time you wanted to change, you'd go back to your developer, ask for it, wait 6 weeks. So with a large amount of cost, and the world's changing. I think one of the things that's happening with the low code, no code revolution is making that possible.
Great. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter, Stephanie Cox 04.
Awesome. LinkedIn or Twitter. And so it's Stephanie Cox 04 is the username.
Yes, that's my Twitter handle.
Great. Any closing remarks before we wrap up here?
Ignore the barking dog, but it was the joys of working remotely. But it was a pleasure chatting with you today.
It's great having you on. And thank you for your time. And once again, until next time on the Prophets of IT, I am Jim Punzenberger, the host and the creator of the Managed Prospecting System. Check out managedprospectingsystem.com if you're looking to generate more business. And bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Prophets of IT. Please smash that like button, subscribe, and share.